during an interview with Zack Polanski, he challenged his interviewer, Ed Balls, by pointing out the obvious fact that he was being grilled by a former Labour cabinet minister whose wife is currently one of the most senior Labour politicians in government, Home Secretary Yvette Cooper.
Do you know what I'm enjoying? That the fact that a Labour politician who's married to a senior Labour minister is allowed to ask questions of a leader of a Green Party. This is not our manifesto, and what you're doing.
Are you accusing me? Are you accusing me of being?
See it for this.
Are you accusing me of being a Labour politician?
I'm accusing it. Well, it's not even an accusation. You know, we are planning to replace the Labour Party and take the fight to reform. But what you're asking me right now, and no question.
You said I was a Labour politician. Did you mean that? Did you mean that or not?
Well, you might have been a Labour minister fairly recently.
I was a Labour cabinet
in the last
minister
10, 20 years. So
yeah. Look, unfortunately, Mr. Polanski, I lost my seat in 2015, and I've not been a Labour politician for 10 years. Luckily, you're a Green politician. You are the party leader. Hang on a sec, Mr. Polanski. You accused me of being a Labour cabinet minister 16 years ago.
Sorry, I can literally hear people laughing in the background. The producers and Curtis are laughing in the background right now. So Ed Balls is angry, and you don't want to be around Ed Balls when he's angry. But seriously, Balls' response. Jesus Christ. I've met him, by the way, when I was 16 in college in Leeds. Balls' response was immediate, and he was very defensive. He pushed back by insisting that he had not been a Labour politician for over a decade, as though, the passing of time somehow dissolved political history, institutional relationships, or, ideological proximity. But that response, misses the point so completely. It almost proves Polanski's argument, because nobody was saying Ed Balls is still sitting on the Labour's front bench. Nobody was suggesting he was, secretly winning votes from, the Good Morning Britain sofa. The point is much more, simple. And it's harder for, Westminster to confront this idea that political power does not end when you lose your seat. Influence does not evaporate when you leave Parliament. Networks don't disappear because your parliamentary pass expires. And proximity to power certainly does not vanish when you are married to one of the most senior ministers in government. Now, one part of all of this that frustrates me is again the conflicts of interest when it comes to lots of people. I don't think that Ed Balls as a former minister should have a TV show slot in any way whatsoever, whether it's on Good Morning Britain, GB News, or any other place. If you actually consume as many podcasts or other shows as I do related to politics, right? If anyone's ever I do listen to The Rest Is Politics because I need to see what other people are saying, and you will still get both Alistair Campbell and also Rory Stewart defending everything that they did. For Alistair Campbell, it's 20 years ago. For Rory Stewart, it's a slightly bit more recently, right? We're talking 8 to 10 years ago. He still defends that to this day because they're still party political. They cannot be objective. They still defend that. And it's the same for lots of other people. The one that really, really grinds my gears in terms of conflict of interest, because I don't do guilt by association. So Camilla Tominey, her dad is the guy, I believe, who is in charge of Lawyers for Israel, whatever it's called. UK Lawyers for Israel. And that would be fine if she didn't seem to be completely, biased. She railed after Corbyn during the period that we were just talking about. We're talking about back-to-back articles, coverage all day, every day. Camilla Tominey going after Corbyn at any point. And she is the same person who, about 2 months ago, put out an article saying that we should just dismiss all these claims against Nigel Farage and his anti-Semitism. So I think it's fine to have people who are close to you and your family who have certain jobs which could cause a conflict of interest, as long as you can show that you can be objective. But most of these people can't. I don't trust Ed Balls to be objective when it comes to grilling Labour. The same way when you listen to The Rest Is Politics, you will get Alistair Campbell defending Keir Starmer and Labour as a whole, and this cycle just continues. And I don't think it's going to change. These types of conflict of interest should not be allowed in our mainstream discourse in the UK. And even if somebody else has to suffer for that, right? In terms of you have the opportunity to have an amazing job, but your, wife or husband, whoever else might, be in conflict of that. I'm sorry, but there's someone else who can have that job. Curtis, I already know what you're going to say, but is Ed Balls a bit delusional in thinking that his Labour past is politically irrelevant when he's interviewing the leader of a party in the UK?
Oh, God. Are you accusing me of being a Labour politician? Honestly, sorry, I was fucking dead. It was me laughing in the background. You couldn't hear me, but in Lewis's ear, it was just me dying. Incredible interview. First of all, I am so happy that someone has finally called out Ed Balls. God, there's so many things I want to say about this. Number one, though, it's very important to point out that there was manufacturing of consent happening. After that clip went out, there was just, if you Googled it, article after article after article after article. Car crash interview from Zack Polanski. Car crash interview from Zack Polanski. And it's like, was not a car crash interview from Zack Polanski. That was Ed Balls making a massive tit of himself. Or, balls of himself. If that makes any sense. Of course, it's a conflict of interest. Now, what Ed Balls says is, well, I wasn't a Labour politician for 15 years or 10 years or whatever. That's not the point, though, because he doesn't understand power or he's lying about power. Just because you're not an elected Labour politician doesn't mean you have power. I mean, number one, you are a host on a morning programme on ITV. That's power, right? Your wife, Yvette Cooper, is Home Secretary, one of the most powerful positions in the country. We're not just talking about a Labour politician, we're talking about a government politician, a government official, right? That is your wife. Ed Balls reflects a very narrow political view, and he's very biased when he's on GMB, which is the Labour right. When you get someone from the Labour left, that doesn't really exist anymore, or someone from the left, whether it's Owen Jones or whether it's Zack Polanski, he's extremely bitter. Extremely bitter. Very different when he's got a centrist or Labour right politician on. So Ed Balls is incredibly biased because he represents the right-wing faction of the Labour Party, which, to be honest, factions do not exist in the Labour Party anymore. It's all just right-wing. That's important to note. I'm also sick and tired of fucking liberals when they're like, they say nothing about this, but like, oh, but Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson has got his own show on GB News. Yes, that's a massive problem. The fact that Ofcom have done nothing about this is nothing short of disgraceful. Nigel Farage is the leader of a political party. Lee Anderson is an MP. They have their own show. The fact that that isn't a conflict of interest is wild to me. The fact that we've allowed that is fucking wild to me. It should be shut down, right? Nigel Farage's show should be shut down. Lee Anderson's show should be shut down immediately because you cannot have that, right? The point is we need to hold MPs to account. The role of the media literally exists to hold people in positions of power to account, especially MPs. We cannot have MPs using the corporate media to spout their own political biases, right? That's bad. But liberals don't say shit about Ed Balls. They don't say nothing, which is crazy too. And I'm so glad that Zack Polanski just called him out straight up. I've noticed in the last couple of days that Zack Polanski has been very more aggressive. I won't say very aggressive. A bit more aggressive than recently. I think he said on another interview these questions because they kept asking. Oh, and actually, you know what? It was the same interview with Ed Balls. They kept asking about the hypno booth thing, and I'm like, why are you asking that now? Fair enough to ask him about that question when he first became leader and it came out. And it was on GMB, by the way, with Ed Balls. They asked him about the hypno booth question. He said that was like 10 years ago. I'm sorry about that. We all do stupid shit. Let's move on. But have you noticed how the hypno booth thing has come around again? It's because the Green Party is surging and the corporate media is panicking. And that is why they're bringing it up again. And Zack Polanski had a perfect response. He said, I noticed that you haven't asked me about taxing billionaires or bills or rent. It's 10 days before local elections, right? You are doing the country a massive fucking disservice asking Zack Polanski about a hypno boob story when in 10 days' time or on 9 days' time, people are going to go to the polls and vote nationally on the local level, but nationally on who they want to represent in the councils. What are you going to do about potholes? What are you going to do about public services? And the question you ask is about a fucking hypno boob story. And Zack Polanski's response was that, and he said, this is why people hate the media. And this is why people hate the media. This is why people are watching Turn Left media. This is why people are watching Navarra media. This is why people are watching Naked Politics. They're reading The Canary, right? Because people are sick and tired of legacy media, the corporate media, and I think that we should be more aggressive. I want Zack Polanski to go on every single show and say, this is why you're hated. Because you don't ask the questions that people really care about.
This is why we need much stricter rules when it comes to this arena. You've got, GB News, the main shareholder, Sir Paul Marshall, he had a secret Twitter account unveiled. We all knew what his opinions were anyway, about, him wanting to deport, loads of Muslims and whatever else he said, right? That stuff can't be really controlled, in terms of he's got this political opinion. But what can be controlled is the fact that GB News recently reported by the Middle East Eye, because we know the Farage has been courting people in the Middle East for donors. More on that to come soon, guys. That GB News helped host the party in the UAE, which, by the way, GB News is half owned by a UAE-based company.
Legatum Institute, isn't it?
What's that?
Legatum Institute.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It's Sir Paul Marshall is a 1% more shareholder, 43% over this UAE-based investment company. And they hosted a party which was there to help boost Nigel Farage, and GB News was there too, reporting from the event, being part of the event. No one else was allowed to be there besides GB News. When you've got Michael Gove being the editor of The Spectator, it can't be objective. We know what their opinions are anyway.
George Osborne went to The Observer. George Osborne went to The Observer.
Did he? I don't remember that.
So after he brought in austerity that murdered 330,000 people with austerity, he fucked off to The Observer.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, only a few years after.
Do you know what I found out recently? I wouldn't class this person as a journalist, so maybe it's a clue, but do you know who George Farmer is?
George Farmer?
Yeah. One of Reform's biggest donors, 200K.
So what's
Candace Owens' husband.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Oh wow!
I only found.
I didn't know that.
I've been looking at
very interesting.
Yeah, I've been looking at Reform donors. More to come on that soon. And I was like, oh, who's this George Farmer guy? Maybe I'll have to figure who this donor is out. Nope. Google.
Didn't take very long, did it?
Candace Owens' husband is one of the biggest Reform donors. What? How did I know
crazy?
And again, but it goes back to that Camilla Tominey thing as well. Again, I think journalists can be objective, but at the same time, when they're proven not to be, she cannot seriously talk about anti-Semitism. I don't think she can be possibly objective on it.
I mean, to be fair, the entire media cannot talk about anti-Semitism, can they? I mean, that's not a Camilla Tominey problem. That is a national issue in the political discourse that we cannot talk about anti-Semitism. I think that's.
But this is why independent media is so good, and this is not even a plug to us. I'm talking about completely different outlets. Again, even that story that I mentioned earlier, Byline, right? They've been doing some of, honestly, the most amazing investigative journalism over the last, for a while now, but over the last few months, it's been particularly good. And it's not even because they've got any sort of political bias. It's because when media is independent, it will go after stories specifically, which is about holding people accountable. Whereas other forms of media aren't necessarily incentivized to do that. They're not set up. They're set up to obviously make profit, to meet people's agenda, to go after clickbait, to go after the boob story, for example, right? That's going to make good TV. People who run ITV and the people who run that show will want somebody like Ed Balls to be on that show to ask Zack Polanski that question, the same way that people liked Piers Morgan in a similar position years before, because he's that kind of guy who will just get people to watch. It's not.
Yeah, but do you know what though?
It's just about wanting people to consume it.
Do you know what? But Piers Morgan is at least charismatic. I would give him that. I don't like Piers Morgan, but I think he's quite charismatic. I also think he's quite effective when he wants to be. The Russell Brand interview, that very famous clip of the excruciating, very, very silent clip of Russell Brand looking through the Bible, right? That was really effective for Piers Morgan.
Yeah,
Ed Balls ain't got the sauce, man. Ed Balls? He ain't got the sauce. He's a terrible interviewer. Political bias aside, because I think he's shit in terms of politics, right? And his political bias, right? If I were to be objective, though, at Ed Balls' skills, he ain't got none. I can at least say that Piers Morgan is incredibly effective. I think he'd be at times very good. Again, not his politics, but I think he's very good at, again, getting certain clips, for example. I think that's true. Ed Balls, though, he ain't got nothing.
But that's the difference between good and bad journalism. And even though I'm not a big fan of this person, I think it's Sophie Ridge from Sky News. She had on one of the Labour ministers the other day. Can't even remember his name. And it was about Mandelson, and it was about him. He was the minister on the morning rounds, and it's a clip that's gone around now where she's basically saying he's giving generic answers to thingy, and she was like, "You have come from number 10. Did you ask the question that I am trying to ask you?" And then he's giving a generic response, and she's saying, so you didn't obviously ask the question. So it's a case of like the questioning was actually really good from her. Like it's a really good clip. I'm not doing it justice at all, as opposed to oftentimes, and Sophie Ridge has done this and other Sky News people, Beth Rigby, not a big fan. It's they try and constantly go for the gotcha, but the reason the gotcha works sometimes and it's useful, right? The Piers Morgan moment with the Bible, that was a kind of a good gotcha moment by him saying nothing at all. Don't like Piers Morgan, but at the same time, because they kind of farm that, they go after it so much, and a lot of the time it actually fails, and therefore they have wasted an opportunity to actually hold a politician accountable in a good way, because Zack Polanski should be held accountable. There's been reporting, which again, it's agenda-driven, the idea that the Spectator and the Telegraph are trying to investigate every single person that's ever existed with the Green Party and going after every single person through their Facebook feeds and all of that. That is agenda-driven, but at the same time, he should still be held accountable.
Absolutely.
With these candidates, how are you vetting them? That is good questioning and that is good journalism. But going after these gotchas in the way that they do, it's just shitty journalism most of the time.
People on the left are not saying you can't criticize left-wing leaders or you can't hold them to account, right? There were questions the mainstream media should put to Jeremy Corbyn, because at the end of the day, even though a lot of us liked him, like his politics, he was still going to potentially wield power over us, right? It's important they're grilled. Same with Zack Polanski, right? I think it was important to bring up the Hypno Boob story at that time, right? But obviously now they're doing it for agenda. That's important. But I think that, look, I also think it's worth mentioning that just because I lump mainstream media people into the same group, there is a hierarchy in that group. Like, Ed Balls is far inferior to someone like Sophie Ridge. Like, Sophie Ridge is restrained by the corporate media, granted, but she is definitely better than Ed Balls. I've seen her interviews. I think she's more effective. I also think she's way more sensible when it comes to quote-unquote gotchas. Like, if someone's not answering a question, call that out. Say, you're not answering the question. Doing a gotcha for the sake of it, for clicks and views or whatever, is not sensible. And that's something that what Ed Balls would do. I mean, I would someone I really respect, right? And, okay, fine, he is on the left. So maybe it's easy for me to say that. But I do generally think, in an objective way, he's a very good journalist. He's a very good interviewer. And that's Mehdi Hasan. Like, he's incredibly effective. And, you know, he had Graham Plantner on, who's running in the US for a Senate seat in Maine. And despite the fact that Mehdi Hasan agrees with Graham Plantner's politics, he asked him, like, tough questions, which are good and important questions to ask. Someone like Mehdi Hasan has integrity. He's very consistent. I mean, imagine just thinking about Mehdi Hasan and Ed Balls. Like, just these two figures. Crazy that, you know, these two people exist in the media when one is far superior. Of course, Mehdi Hasan has now left corporate media and he started Zateo, which, you know, Zateo is doing some really good stuff. But it's crazy that these two people exist in the same sphere when Ed Balls he got there through connections and he's terrible, and Mehdi Hasan is very good.
But the quality of journalism has gone down so much over the years. I respect the way Andrew Neil has interviewed people in the past more than I do with some more modern left journalists. Because at least even back in the day, Andrew Neil he's very biased in many ways. And there's been many moments where people will say he's not been the best journalist. But even still, you can go back to clips like Ben Shapiro and other leading conservative figures in the country where he's absolutely fucking grilled them. And this is probably part of the reason why his relationship with GB News just didn't work out, because they were wanting to do too much more tabloidy stuff. And even now, the current, I don't know, groups of journalists that we've got out there, I just don't think are just generally doing that good of a job. There are some better ones. I actually really like Lewis Goodall, even though I don't agree with Emily Matlis on everything. If I want somebody grilled, I want them in front of Emily, because Emily is genuine. It's not just because of Prince Andrew. It's not the one Prince Andrew interview. She's done it so many times, whether it's Rupert Lowe or somebody really far on the left. She is very good.
I mean,
at doing it.
At the very least, she just straight up called Rupert Lowe a racist. And I was quite surprised, but I was surprised about that, because that's not an Emily Matlis thing to do. That's not a corporate media thing to do. They usually like, oh, well, wow, this someone, one might find this problematic, but she was like, you're a racist, aren't you? So I was like, almost blown away that she did it. I think you're probably giving too much credit to Emily Matlis though, and Lewis Goodall. Like, I think Lewis Goodall, I don't think is quite as bad as Emily Matlis. I don't have much respect for these people. But, you know, that's by the by, isn't it?
Well, we are picking. Well, that doesn't mean we're picking amongst the bad bunch, aren't we? Anyway, I didn't